The hotel room in Utah was a tomb of silence, its opulence a stark contrast to the internal devastation. Erika Kirk sat on the edge of the untouched bed, the digital clock casting a faint, greenish glow. 2:17 a.m. Just hours earlier, the predictable rhythm of her life had been irrevocably shattered by a single, catastrophic event. The frantic phone calls, the hushed and urgent voices, the grim-faced officials, it all replayed in her mind with the surreal quality of a nightmare. She was a widow. The word felt foreign, an archaic label for a reality that couldn't possibly be hers. Not now. Not with two young children sleeping in the adjacent room, their world still intact only through the fragile barrier of innocent sleep. Then, a disruption in the heavy quiet. The light in the ensuite bathroom began to stutter. It wasn't a simple power flicker. It was a frantic, rhythmic pulse. On, off, on, off. A silent, distressed signal against the marble. A sob caught in her throat, this one laced not just with grief, but with a startling, impossible recognition. Her memory flashed to a Manhattan sidewalk, early in their courtship. A street lamp above them had behaved in the same erratic way as they walked, hand in hand. "You know, it's so weird," Charlie had said, glancing upward, his grin illuminated in the staccato light. "This happens to me a lot." "Really?" she'd laughed. "Yeah. It's like a little glitch in the Matrix when we're together." It had become their secret signal. In a crowded room before a speech, over a quiet dinner, a flickering bulb would draw their gaze. Charlie would offer a slow, deliberate wink. "I'm here. We're connected." Now, in the crushing solitude, the light was calling to her. She pulled her knees to her chest, the composure she'd clung to finally dissolving. The tears were hot and silent, a mix of profound loss and something else, a confirmation. Amidst the chaos, a point of inexplicable calm. A single thread of light in a tapestry of despair. "Baby," she whispered into the quiet. "I feel you. I know you're here." The light continued its dance, a beacon in the overwhelming dark, a silent testament that the man she loved and the mission he embodied had left an indelible mark. The journey ahead, for his legacy and for her own peace, was just beginning. To comprehend the scale of the loss, one must first understand the man and the phenomenon he became. Charlie Kirk was less a traditional political figure and more a visionary builder. He possessed a unique ability to diagnose the anxieties of a generation and articulate a response that was both political and deeply spiritual. Publicly, he was a force of nature on stage, capable of holding thousands of young people in rapt attention, his voice a powerful instrument against cultural apathy. He was the founder of Turning Point USA, an organization that grew into a political powerhouse by mobilizing youth. He mastered the modern media landscape, understanding that to change politics, one first had to change the culture. Privately, he was a study in intense discipline. He approached his physical well-being with the focus of an athlete preparing for a marathon. His diet was clean, precise, a form of fuel for what he saw as a daily battle. Indulgences like mint chocolate chip ice cream were rare, annual events. He abstained from alcohol and junk food, often explaining, "I need to operate at a level that requires the right kind of fuel." His most profound discipline, however, was his commitment to the Sabbath. In a life of nonstop travel and relentless pressure, Charlie Kirk would intentionally power down. Laptops closed, phones silenced, the endless stream of emails and strategy sessions deliberately paused. He spoke of rest not as laziness, but as an act of faith. "You don't need to carry the weight of the world," he'd say. "It already has a savior, and it's not you." At the center of this whirlwind was Erika. If Charlie was the architect, she was the foundation. Before their life together, she was a Miss Arizona building a career in New York City as a casting director and model, a world of bright lights and fierce independence, shaped by a mother who instilled in her a strong sense of self-reliance. Her first encounter with Charlie was framed as a professional consultation. She saw it as a networking opportunity. He saw a different future entirely. Sitting across from him, She was struck less by romantic potential and more by the sheer force of his intellect and conviction. Then he delivered the line that would redefine her path. "I'm not going to hire you. I'm going to date you." For her, it felt like a divine redirection. She believed a higher power used Charlie to steer her away from a life that prioritized career above all else. Their connection was immediate and intense. They married, started a family, and dreamed of a house full of children. He was her baby, the man whose unwavering gaze felt like home, the father who would delight in bringing his pregnant wife her fast food cravings, a joyful indulgence he never partook of himself. He built Turning Point USA with the same meticulous care he applied to his personal life. He didn't just hire staff. He curated a community, a hand-picked team selected for their character and shared mission. He was, by all accounts, constructing a vessel designed to endure beyond any single individual. In a meeting with donors months before the tragedy, when asked about the organization's future without him, Charlie was reportedly calm and assured. "What I have built will one day be vision-led," he stated, adding that Erika would be capable of running it. He was weaving a tapestry, carefully placing each and every thread. The Day of the Phoenix event began with the ordinary rhythm of family life. Charlie had spent part of the night in his daughter's room, a common occurrence. Erika was awake when he returned to their bedroom in the soft morning light. He moved quietly to his dresser. She watched as he collected 2 items he had removed before sleeping, his wedding ring and a necklace from which hung a simple cross and a St. Michael's medal. It was a daily ritual, a symbolic armoring for the day ahead. He fastened the chain around his neck. His goodbye kiss was soft, routine. There was no hint of finality, just the quiet confidence of a man stepping into his purpose. The footage from that day shows him at the peak of his influence. The stage was set for America Fest, Turning Point's signature event. The energy from the crowd of thousands was palpable. Charlie walked out to roaring applause, his smile easy, his presence commanding. His speech was a powerful synthesis of his core beliefs, weaving political commentary with spiritual hope. He spoke of purpose, of cultural renewal, of reaching the disaffected. The connection with the audience was electric. Then, a series of sudden, sharp sounds. At first, there was a collective, confused hesitation. The camera footage becomes unstable, swinging erratically. The image captures a moment of stunned surprise on Charlie's face before he disappears from view, the microphone crashing to the stage. The scene rapidly descends into chaos, the audio filling with screams and frantic movement. Elsewhere, Erika's phone rang. Seeing the caller ID from the venue, her sense of calm instantly evaporated. The silence on the other end of the line, before a strained voice spoke, communicated a truth more terrible than words. The subsequent hours were a blur of motion and dread. By the time she reached the site, the formal confirmation was waiting. Charlie Kirk Jr. was gone. The architect had vanished, leaving behind a blueprint for a future he would not see. The news reverberated across the nation, a seismic event in an already divided country. The public response was immediate and fractured, reflecting the deep political and cultural chasms he had so often spoken about. Online forums and social media platforms erupted with a torrent of speculation, analysis, and commentary, often overshadowing the human tragedy at its core. But within the walls of Turning Point and the Kirk household, a different narrative began to take shape, one defined by a refusal to capitulate to chaos. Erika, navigating a grief of unimaginable depth, made a conscious decision. The movement would not end. The anger that many expected, and some demanded, would not take root. She remembered the tapestry. The organization Charlie built held firm. The team he had so carefully assembled did not scatter. They coalesced. The machinery of Turning Point, built on a foundation of shared conviction, continued to operate. There was no public infighting, no mass resignation. The grief was processed privately, and the work continued with a renewed, solemn determination. They orchestrated a massive memorial service that served as both a tribute and a declaration of continuity. It was at this memorial that Erika made a statement that would define her leadership. Before a nation of mourners and a watching world, Her voice did not waver. "I forgive him." The 3 words landed with profound force. She was offering forgiveness to the individual responsible, a young man who, in a tragic irony, embodied the very type of disaffected youth Charlie had dedicated his life to reaching. The reaction was intensely polarized. To some, it was a breathtaking act of grace. To others, a perplexing and controversial choice. But for Erika, it was presented as a spiritual and strategic imperative. She would later explain that anger would be a distraction, a weight that would prevent her from building upon what Charlie had entrusted to her. She described forgiveness not as an emotion, but as a deliberate action, a choice to disarm the very animus that had precipitated the tragedy. Stepping into Charlie's office after his death was like entering a space where time had stopped. His jacket remained on the back of his chair. A notepad on his desk bore his distinctive handwriting, the top item on a to-do list reading, "Save the Lost Boys of the West." Erika began to read his final book, Stop in the Name of God, which he had completed shortly before his death. Its central theme was the transformative power of the Sabbath, the sacred necessity of rest. To her, his words felt alive, a continuation of his voice. The book's completion felt significant. He had written extensively about finding rest, and now, she reflected, he was experiencing its ultimate form. Yet, the practical void he left was immense. The central, unanswered question loomed over every meeting and every decision. How does an organization built around a singular visionary continue without him? Erika's approach was not to imitate Charlie, but to lead from her own strengths. Where he had been the public orator, she would become the strategic steward. She focused intensely on the family, the fundamental unit he had always championed. She became fiercely protective of her children's innocence, determined to provide them with a normal childhood. She spoke to them of heaven as a joyful place where their Father was watching over them, a narrative of comfort and hope. She also faced the relentless scrutiny and noise of the public sphere. Every gesture, every interaction was analyzed and often misinterpreted. A moment of comfort with a political ally became fodder for bizarre online speculation. Even her personal appearance became a subject of unfounded conjecture. Through it all, her public response remained one of detached resolve. "I'm okay with the world not understanding me," she stated. "If they could understand me, then I'm not doing something right." The mission of Turning Point, she affirmed, would not be diluted. There would be no shift toward the political center, no softening of its core message. The focus would remain on the foundational, grassroots work of engaging communities and empowering young people. The true confrontation of this new era was not with a person, but with a set of circumstances. It was a test of faith and fortitude, played out in private and in the glare of the media. In a televised interview, seated calmly, Charlie's St. Michael's medal around her neck, Erika faced the questions that hung in the air. The interviewer posed the difficult, theological question on many minds. How do you square it? How can you be wearing your cross and your St. Michael's medal and still have this happen? How have you squared that? Erika's gaze was steady. "The Lord is so powerful," she began, "and we're not meant to understand all of his ways, but there's mercy in knowing that God can use any situation for good. Control is an absolute illusion." She returned to the metaphor of the tapestry, explaining that we only see the tangled, messy back, while the weaver sees the beautiful, intentional picture on the front. When the interviewer confessed to feeling anger on her behalf and asked if she shared that feeling, Erika's response was immediate. "The enemy would love for me to be angry," she said. "It would distract me. And if I had that anger in my heart, that foothold, he wouldn't be able to use me." Asked what she would say to the family of the individual responsible, her answer was not one of sentimental sympathy, but of sobering theology. "Anything I could wish for them," she replied, "would pale in comparison to the justice of God." It was a statement that removed the burden of vengeance from her shoulders and placed it on a divine scale. The confrontation was met not with fury, but with an unshakable, and to some, unsettling, faith. The aftermath of such an event is not an end, but a permanent recalibration. For Turning Point USA, The organization continues its work, but the charismatic heart around which it beat is silent. The political victories that followed were achieved in his absence, a bittersweet success. Erika navigates a landscape of firsts, birthdays, holidays, major events, all shadowed by his memory. She leads an organization of thousands, a role she never sought, steering it through the turbulent waters of upcoming elections. The political figure Charlie had strongly supported, J.D. Vance, is now a central figure in the movement's future, a connection that underscores the continuity of Charlie's political vision. All of this is balanced with the task of raising two children who are gradually becoming aware of their father's complicated legacy. She strives to make their faith a source of joy and their father's memory an inspiration of strength, not sorrow. The political environment remains as polarized as ever. The tensions that defined Charlie Kirk's life and work persist. The movement he built now rests in the hands of his widow, a leader whose authority is derived from faith, whose strategy is rooted in forgiveness, and whose mandate is to complete the work he began. The threads of his tapestry are still being woven. Some are dark with sorrow, others bright with determination. The final image remains unseen. The arena is packed, charged with the energy of thousands. It is the closing night of America Fest. The air is thick with a potent mix of memory and anticipation. Erika Kirk walks onto the stage. There is no dramatic introduction. Simply a woman, poised and calm, carrying an invisible weight. She speaks of her husband. She speaks of faith. She speaks of the road ahead. Her voice is not the fiery proclamation of Charlie's. It is a steady, compelling current, drawing the audience into a shared mission. She talks of family, of protecting innocence, of remaining steadfast. As she concludes, the crowd rises as one, a thunderous, emotional, defiant standing ovation. She offers a small, resilient smile and a wave. Then, as the applause begins to ebb, the pyrotechnicians, honoring a tradition Charlie had always insisted upon, more pyro, always more, activate the finale. With a resonant whoosh, pillars of fire erupt along the stage. A shower of golden sparks cascades from the ceiling, a glittering veil against the darkness. The heat washes over the front rows in a wave. The light is intense, a magnificent, controlled blaze. Erika stands silhouetted against the flames, her hand over her heart. She does not retreat. She seems to absorb the energy, the heat, the light, the sound. This was his signature. The fire. The unapologetic, glorious spectacle. He would have loved every second. The camera holds on her face as she looks out over the sea of firelit faces, over the legacy she now carries, over the future she is determined to build. The flames are reflected in her eyes. The image fades, leaving not an end, but the lingering impression of a single, enduring spark in the vastness of the dark.